standing. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for your faithfulness and your goodness towards us. We pray and ask in the name of Jesus that even as we have come to deliberate on issues of governance, which is very dear to your heart, you will grant us the grace not just to deliberate on topics and issues of concern, but most importantly, connect us to the true source of power, that in executing those interventions, we will execute for God, country, continent, and the world. Amen.
Please be seated, and many thanks to you, the Reverend Mrs. Angela Carmen. It was the great Nelson Mandela who said, "It always seems impossible until it's done." And if you want to understand how this applies to us, it gives me great joy to give to you a man who dreamed this and translated that dream into reality, for which reason we're here for the second edition. Would you please put your hands together for yours and mine, Professor Douglas Boating. A grateful nation salutes you. We say thank you for this great legacy. It's on his behalf that I stand this morning, Jerry Ajololo, to say a very good morning to you, our guest of honor, Chief of Staff, Office of the President, the Honorable Julius Debra, the President of the Institute of Directors, Ghana, Mrs. Mary Asariaboa, our platinum sponsor, our diamond partner, I beg your pardon, Executive Chairman of the KGL Group, Mr. Alex Dade, the President of the Ghana Bar Association, Madame Ifwa Gate, the Dean of the UPSC School of Law, Professor Kofi Abochi, the President of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Stefan Miezan, our special guest, the President and Chair of the Governing Council of the Chartered Institute of Directors, Nigeria, Otumba Adetunji Oyebanji. I hope I got all of that correct. The CEO and board directors of private and public institutions here present, officers from our security services, sponsors and partners, distinguished delegates, members of the press, good morning to you all, and a warm welcome to the second edition of the National Boardroom Governance Summit, where ours is a labor of love, shaping accountability in the boardroom. We gather here today with the clear understanding of the important role that the board plays in shaping not only organizational efficiency, but sustainable development. And hence our theme for this year, which is Daring to be Different, the role of the chairperson in effective boardroom governance. This conference is designed in such a way that we get to hear from experienced stakeholders, and for which reason we've brought together a careful blend of participants from both the public and the private sector. It is our hope that we shall find this enriching, and at the end of the day, we shall be able to say that we've achieved the objectives set out for this conference. For this opening ceremony, we'll be glad to have two remarks, one by our convener, and the second, which will be the keynote. And thereafter, ladies and gentlemen, we shall delve into the next plenary, which will be a series of panel discussions. In welcoming us, would you please make welcome once again, yours and mine, our convener, Professor Douglas Boating.
Good morning. I hope you enjoyed your breakfast. Thank you very much for making time to be with us today and daring to be on time. Today, I stand before you very humbled. Yesterday, I had a meeting with my permanent chairperson, and I was allowed to wear pink socks. So you see I'm wearing my pink socks. And it's for a reason. Cancer Month. At the meeting, it was also resolved that I wear green, and it's for a purpose. Our forests, our rivers, and our lands. The environmental terrorists think they will win, they will never win. This battle is not for the government alone. The boardroom, we have to dare to be different to support the government. I'm pleading with my fellow chairpersons, past and present, that the battle can be won. It will not be won in 4 years. It will be won in 10, 15 years because the damage is deep. But slow progress is better than no progress. We shall get there, and they will lose. Good morning. Honorable Julius Deborah, Chief of Staff in the Office of the President, thank you for coming through. Distinguished colleagues, fellow custodians of our continent's future, all protocols observed. I am deeply honored to stand before this distinguished. I need to turn on my, some of us, technology is not very friendly to us. Somebody needs to come and fix it for me. But before they come, let me continue. I am truly honored to stand before this distinguished group of industry leaders and C-suite executives to share my objective views on the importance of us, as past and present chairpersons, daring to be different. It cannot be business as usual if our goal is to serve society as a whole for the common long-term good. Let us set aside comfort and listen with conscience. This is not a speech about titles. This is a conversation about trust, duty, and tomorrow. The seat of the chairperson is not a furniture. It is a promise made to the people we meet today and those we may never meet, especially the children who will inherit the outputs of our decisions. The children who will inherit the outputs of our decision. Across our continent, there are boards that meet, talk, circulate thick board packs, and close with applause. Yet hospitals wait for beds, medications, equipment, and spares. Schools wait for books, tables, and chairs. Major products run late. Bills and costs run over, and citizens suffer and lose faith. We cannot pretend that the ritual begins when we move from ceremony to consequence. Please allow me to be direct and respectful. In Africa, we relatively undervalue stewardship. In too many situations, the chair and directors carry full fiduciary risk, yet receive neither the resources nor the protection to match that risk. This is a false economy and an obstacle to boldness in the boardroom. When we starve governance, we feed waste. When we starve governance, we feed waste. When we discount the role, we invite quiet failure. Chairs and directors must be paid well, fairly for their work, risk, and exposure. Of course, not extravagantly, but credibly and openly, benchmarked to responsibility, results, and personal risk. As citizens, if you want courage at the table, we must stop asking people to be brave at a discount. Shareholders pay fair pay with director and chair liability insurance so that ethical and daring decisions are not on a personal gamble. A shareholder cannot demand backbone while providing no armor. A shareholder cannot demand backbone while providing no armor. Yes, serving state-owned serving state-owned institution is a national duty. Of course, it's a national duty. But national duty does not mean compensation might be so low or merely symbolic. My good colleagues in here, I have chaired a lot of boards, and I know some of the predicaments that you face. One of the boards which I chaired, today I can openly disclose because I'm no longer there, some years back, as a chairperson of one of the most powerful institutions in the country, the sitting allowance was 1,700 cedis. Now, if you meet 4 times a year, that is under 7,000 cedis. That is a challenge, and we have to, as a collective, be able to convince the shareholder that fairness is very important if they are to take directorships serious. And I'm sure a lot of you in here, although quiet, are crying in silence, because these days it's not job for the girls or the boys. You can be humiliated. You can also go to Insewem. You heard President Mahama last week, 6 months. You might go in there, but you are getting paid 1,700 cedis for the responsibility. We have to work as a collective so that we can prove to government that the job is very important. Therefore, the compensation must also be fair and reasonable. These days, it's not just job for the boys, as I mentioned earlier. We have seen presidents. You've seen what has happened to the former president of France, and senior officials publicly humiliated and even sometimes sent to prison. It is somebody today, it could be you tomorrow. If African chairpersons do not read and question their board packs, they will be increasingly humiliated. I know a lot of my good colleagues, sometimes not fault of your own, board packs come too early or too late. Therefore, you don't even read it. You might as well not go to the meeting because you'll be held accountable. Tomorrow or after the next election, it could be any of us who may have neglected our fiduciary responsibilities by not questioning the executive. There is a saying, even the sea accepts rainwater. In the same way, even a national supervisory servant who is perceived as wealthy still must receive competitive, transparent, and compensation for the role. Otherwise, the work attracts either the reckless, self-serving, or the distracted. If we want principled leadership, we must reward principled work. If we want principled leadership, we must reward principled work. I also ask that we remove quiet distortions that corrode integrity. If chairs are fairly compensated, they must not look to per diems as the substitute. Let's not look to per diems as the substitute. Per diem should cover actual expenses, not become the side income. When the base is fair, extras can be modest and trust grows. For context, public disclosures and independent surveys suggest that non-executive chairs of major listed companies in South Africa often receive total annual fees in the range of $140,000 to $330,000, depending on size and sector and committee load. Chairs of large state-owned entities vary more widely, with published fees ranging and meeting fees that total $70,000 to over $180,000 a year. Again, depending on scope and exposure, By comparison, non-executive chairs for large companies in mature markets often sit around £300,000 to £600,000 for FTSE 100 and £500,000 to £1 million for Standard & Poor 500. I am not advocating that we should pay those fees here. No, no, no. But what I'm saying that let's be fair to chairpersons and boards, because at the end of the day, they hold a huge responsibility. And the research agenda that we are all advocating for our mother Ghana depends on the boardroom and the experience and the motivation of the chairperson, who is the de facto leader of the organization in a supervisory capacity. There is another habit that we must change: quarterly board meetings may suit stable systems, the developed world. Our reality is different. Supply chains are fragile. Cash is tight. Compliance gaps appear quickly and unexpectedly. In developing markets, boards should meet monthly for focused, time-bound sessions that track delivery, cash compliance, people, and risk. We should not adopt the quarterly meetings. It has not worked, and it's not working. We have to dare to be different. We have to meet monthly so that we can identify the issues very quickly and come to a decision. I know some of my colleagues here are doing that already, but I think we must insist that that is done. This is certainly not to micromanage. We are still supervisory, but we have to be able to be on top of things. Quarterly meetings doesn't work. I have been there and I know. Honorable Chief of Staff and distinguished colleagues, delay in most cases increases losses and perpetuates more wrongdoings. Delay in most cases increases losses and perpetuates more wrongdoing. Every oversight saves money and protects reputation. As one proverb cautions, a stitch in time saves 9. In the boardroom context, a board in time saves millions. A board in time saves millions. Oversight must be also timely, not ceremonial. Boards should insist on quarterly interval audit meetings and risk reporting and stage updates from external auditors throughout the year. A single annual report often arrives too late, and we all know that. Explains too little and rarely recovers what has already been lost. We get all the reports every year. 20 billion cedis gone. 30 billion cedis gone. How much of it have we been able to recover? It is too late. Hence, let's have the monthly meetings and quarterly reports so that we can save money. The kitty is very limited, but there's a lot we can do with monthly meetings and quarterly audits. You know, in our case, we are always reacting after the fact, and it's very costly for us in Africa, and in this case, Ghana. You spend again to chase what has bled away. We spend to chase what has bled away, what is gone, and we have to go and spend money again to try and recover. For me, it doesn't make sense. Let's minimize the losses. Let us replace annual surprises with quarterly truths. The message to management and to the market will be clear. As chairs, we must not fear sunlight. This is further discipline that we must embrace if we care about reputation, capital, and national standing. Chairs and boards must discourage the washing of dirty linen in public until the facts are established. It is our patriotic duty to protect brand Ghana. When you keep washing your dirty linen in public, you are hurting brand Ghana. Because the investors out there, they see Ghana first before they see the institution. Let's wait for the facts and then publish. These days it's becoming too rampant, where organizations, are mentioned, sometimes innocently. And then, when you're in the US, you are sitting with the likes of Goldman Sachs. They refer you to your country. What is going on with this company? It is our duty as chairpersons to discourage that, because in the end, we all suffer. When we allow half-truths to become headlines, we drop the clay pot of credibility on our own feet. The consequences are real. Partnership stocks stall. Lenders price in uncertainty. When we go and borrow, we pay more interest. The risk profile of the company and the country rises, and so do borrowing costs. Interest rates creep up because risk has been amplified in public without evidence to balance the fear. My fellow distinguished colleagues, let the facts speak first, then let accountability swiftly follow and fairly. We must dare to be different, my fellow chairpersons. This is my call to every chairperson here. We must dare to be different in cadence. Monthly meetings are a must. I've mentioned it earlier, not quarterly gatherings. It's not working for us, and it will never work. We must dare to be different in transparency, quarterly audit visibility, not annual retrospectives. It's too late. We must dare to be different in discipline. Choose life cycle value over cheap sticker prices. Low, big roads collapse when the first rains happen and the invoice returns. It's costing us more to maintain our roads than building roads. It is a fact, because we are always price chiseling. It doesn't work. Total cost of ownership. It is very, very important. We must dare to be different in conscience. Let's think about the unborn African child. Let's pay small suppliers on time so that they can breathe, build capacity, and deliver. A nation cannot be strong if its local suppliers are starved by the very contracts that should feed them. We must dare to be different in reporting genuine mistakes and exposing wrongdoing and possible corruption. Please, for the sake of our beloved country, do not sensationalize ongoing investigations. Public accusations can seriously harm the nation. I mentioned that earlier. Whatever we are doing, let's think of brand Ghana. We must verify first and then communicate responsibly. Continuity must be designed, not hoped for. In far too many institutions, outgoing and incoming chairs never meet. We lose memory and pay for amnesia with repeated mistakes and wrongdoings. Moving forward, we as chairpersons need to institutionalize formal face-to-face transition between the ongoing and incoming chairs, including documented handovers that cover strategy, risk investigations, and commitments to stakeholders. Increasingly, in most developing economies, outgoing chairs are being appointed as honorary chairs to pass on wisdom and guide incoming chairs. There's nothing wrong with us also doing that. We are one people. We should never, ever let politics divide us, because at the end of the day, when the ship sinks, it's not just MPP or NDC, it's us all. We all suffer. So it is our duty as chairperson, whether you are politically affiliated to another party or not, to think of Ghana first. Most importantly, appoint a chair for a 6-year term. These 4 years is not working. Let's be bold. Let's be daring. Let's make it 6, so that there will be proper transition in between. Because right now, every 4 years, there's a wholesale change, and then we start again. We all know it's not working. Let's dare to be different, because at the end of the day, we are one people and not separated by politics. My fellow distinguished colleagues, the chair seat will always change, but the duty always remain. The chair seat will always change, but the duty will always remain. The past and present boards are not enemies. No, no, no. We must learn from each other to ensure continuity. knowledge and wisdom transfer. Politics must never divide us. And I beg my fellow colleagues in here that we should never let politics divide us. We are one people. Culture is what leaders consistently reward and consistently refuse to change. As chairpersons, we must encourage the setting of public scorecards. Let's be open. That board reviews monthly and publishes summary every quarter. On time, on budget, delivery for major projects, customer or citizen service reliability, verified local value addition. We need to publish that to encourage fellow Ghanaians to be more optimistic. My distinguished colleagues, what is measured in daylight tends to improve. Pride and pressure are powerful medicines when administered fairly. We must avoid group think. We must read the board packs before attending the meeting. Otherwise, recuse yourself. We must lead by example by respecting time. We must lead by example by respecting time. We must lead by switching off our phones during meetings. These days, it's becoming more and more difficult when you are conducting meetings because we all go on social media trying to find things. We must discipline the boardroom so that we don't sit there for too long. We must keep the meeting to not more than 3 hours. After 3 hours, statistics have shown that people switch off. As board chairs and board secretaries, let's keep our meetings very short and neat. We must equip the board to think, not just to listen. We must ensure that the board pack come at least 7 working days before the meeting so that you can go through it. We must demand short decision-ready papers that include options, trade-offs, and life cycle costs. We must mandate a standing risk and ethics dashboard that can be openly shared with the community. You know, if the information arrives late or unclear, it sends the wrong signal. The board's time is for choices, not for guessing. The board's time is for choices, not for guessing. Another proverb that guides us is that the one who fetches the water is the one who learns where the well is deep. Boards must fetch the right information from the right wells. Boards must fetch the right information from the right wells. To appointing authorities, regulators, and owners, hear this with goodwill. If you want better outcomes, give chairs the tools to deliver. Pay fairly. Protect independence. Publish the rules and keep them. A chair that fears arbitrary removal cannot defend principle. Enshrine due processes for board leadership so that dissent in public interest is not punished as disloyalty. And please, separate strategy from politics. Separate strategy from politics, very important. You know, strategy loves the long view. Politics loves the shortcut. Strategy loves the long view. Politics loves the shortcut. The chair stands between them to defend tomorrow from the temptation of today. To our young and aspiring boardroom professionals, your voice, the youth, matters. As chairs, we must invite youth observers to some board meetings to start learning the rules of the boardroom. We must start inviting the youth, the future generation, to sit in board meetings so that they will learn the rules of the game early. We must run shadow boards in universities and professional bodies that mirror real agendas and decisions. When young minds witness ethical leadership up close, shortcuts lose their shine. For us, the future must sometimes be present when the future is being decided. The future must be present when the future is being decided. There are practical changes that we can start now. Oh, yes, we can. We must codify the chair's mandate, draw bright lines between oversight and operations. We must make clear that the chair enforces accountability, protects the long term, and ensures that the board hears the uncomfortable facts. If you are not comfortable with uncomfortable facts, then you don't deserve to be a chairman or a chairwoman. We must adopt, and I keep repeating this, monthly meetings with standard agenda and real-time dashboard. We must require quarterly internal audits and reporting to save our country money. We must publish in plain language quarterly scorecards for citizens. Let's be open so that the people know that in the boards we are doing something about their future. We must require continual annual professional development. A lot of chair people don't go through CPD programs. That is why you have the likes of the Institute of Directors. You need to go through those programs. And if you don't go through, the shareholder should fire the chairperson. Because at the end of the day, you need to learn to be able to help. Not just the organization, especially state-owned, the country to develop. We must stagger board terms. I believe that if a 6-year mandate is given, it will help with all these stop-go, unfortunate incidents that happen in our beloved motherland. We must benchmark chair and director remuneration against responsibility and risk with clear performance links. We must not allow per diems to become a shadow pay. We must not. Let's have a dialogue as a collective with the shareholders and justify why that fairness is important. And then tie it to performance. If you don't deliver certain targets, you are fired. I don't believe that we should be waiting 4 years for transitions. No. If after 2 years, the board person is not delivering, he should go. Why not? At the end of the day, who is paying them? It's all of us, especially state-owned entities. We should learn to fire people who are not delivering. Nothing wrong with that. It will send a signal for us as chairs to deliver. Because at our age, we don't want humiliation. So we will do what is right for the common good. We must pay small and medium-sized suppliers on time. Late payment is a silent theft. We must mandate chair-to-chair transitions. It's very, very important so that knowledge can be passed on. Memory is a national asset. Why push so hard for these changes, my distinguished colleagues? Because every decision writes a line in the life of a child who cannot vote and has no lobbies. Decisions we make has impact on the next generation, and we have to get it right. Because waste is a thief of public trust. Because integrity without capacity cannot deliver. Because if we do not change, we will continue to chase losses, which now is becoming very expensive. Are you aware, my distinguished colleagues, that if we do not get it right in the boardroom, we will go back to IMF? It is a fact. Because the waste is not going to go down. We are not going to economically develop. There will be no industrialization. So we'll be going back to beg again. The boardroom is the key to Africa's economic emancipation. When we ignore it, we are in trouble. We've got to do something. And the responsibility lies with the chairs, a lot of whom are in this room already. We also know the cost of, what happens in our boardroom if it's not right. When boards meet rarely and act gently, projects drift. We lose money. Debts swell, and public anger rises. Where annual reports were only the window, faults become scandals and corrections come late and sometimes very costly. There is a proverb, the lizard that jumped from the high tree said it will praise itself if no one else will. Let our boards not rely on self-praise. Let us earn praise through visible, verifiable delivery. On conscience management, the chair must keep the institution's moral compass clean. Stewardship is more than compliance. It is the courage to say no to profitable wrong and yes to difficult right. It is courage to say no to profitable wrong and yes to difficult right. Socially responsible choices are not a luxury. They are risk management in plain clothes. When boards tie major awards to local value addition, skills transfer, and labor, supply chain improves. The currency stabilizes and communities see the economy is not a rumor, but a partner in improving their lives and livelihood. On industrialization, the chair must be the quiet architect of national progress. Without the boardroom and the chair doing what is right for society, there will be no industrialization. You know, procurement is the key because everything that we do involves procurement. And I believe that boards should have in their committees or members of the board procurement professionals. We must insist that major awards include training. When we are signing deals, we must include training, maintenance, and space. You know, when I look around and I compare country and government offices to our counterparts in other parts of Africa and developing world, we have a maintenance problem in our country. When we build, we do not factor in the maintenance. Then we kept spending more and more and more trying to repair the damage. We have to be there to be different. Let us also speak about lobbying in a responsible way. Around the world, many sectors benefit when boards engage policymakers openly. Nothing wrong with chairs engaging the policymakers. They are there to listen. They mean no harm. Give them ideas and they will take it. Globally, leading companies and funds do the same. We can do it. When guardrails are clear, dialogue improves policy and reduces uncertainty. We are all duty to help the government. Let's put the politics aside because we are one people and help the government to succeed because if the ship sinks, we all go down with it. It's like the Titanic. The rich and poor, they all sink. We don't want that in Ghana. And oh, yes, we can because we have the capability and the willpower. During the COVID time, we survived. Galamsey, we will survive. It's just that we need to come together and work with governments because government cannot do it alone. Slow progress is better than no progress. We must always remember that. Let's not stand still because when you stand still, you can be knocked over. We are inching forward and it is possible. There's always sunrise after sunset. The chair must ensure that advocacy stays inside ethics and inside the law. Let's not go around breaking the law. No, no, no. Let's do what is right, but be bold. Now, a word on unity and legacy. Past and present chairs, they are runners in a relay. One passes the baton. The others spring with respect. If a child washes his hands, he can eat with the elders, says an African proverb. Let the old and the new sit together. It is important. Past and present, sit together to think about tomorrow and leave a legacy rather than seek applause. Applause, you know, it fades. Legacy stays. Some will ask, can we afford this level of governance discipline? Of course we can. I ask in turn, can we afford the cost of doing business as usual? No. The cost of weak oversight has implications. The cost of late orders has implications. The cost of overdue payments has implications. The cost of collapsed roles has implications. The cost of idle machines has implications. The cost of public answer, of course, has implications. Discipline is cheaper than failure. This is the quiet math of stewardship. Before I close, my distinguished colleagues, let me gather some points that we must process when we get home. Fair and transparent pay and proper protection for chairs and directors are necessities, not luxuries. Monthly board meetings enable real-time accountability in developing markets. Quarterly audits and risk reporting replace annual surprises with early correction. Life cycle value beats low bid waste. On-time payment to small suppliers. strengthens national delivery. Formal chair-to-chair transitions preserve memory and prevent repeated mistakes. Public scoreboards, let's be open with the public, can improve performance. If chairs are fairly compensated, per diems must not become a shadow pay. Independence and due process protect conscience and sharpen courage. Distinguished colleagues, we must dare for the sake of tomorrow and the African child, the unborn one. Let me repeat again. We must dare to convene monthly. We must dare to demand quarterly truths. We must dare as a collective to ask for performance-driven board fees. We must dare to publish a scorecard. We must dare to say no when the cheapest choice will be the most expensive mistake. We must dare to hand our successor an institution stronger than the one we received. We must dare to hand our successor an institution stronger than the one we received. Let this be our answer when history asks where the guardians were. We were here. We are all here now. We paid governance the respect it deserved. We met monthly. We insisted on quarterly truths. We protected those who chose integrity. We left the institution stronger than we found it. And let this be our promise to the child yet unborn. We will not spend their tomorrow to fund our comfort today. We will not spend their tomorrow to fund our comfort today. We will choose discipline over drama, light over heat, systems over slogans, and deliver over promise. The inconvenient truth, my distinguished colleagues, is that the future will judge us by what we did when we knew what was right. The future will judge us by what we did when we knew what was right. The hopeful truth is that we can begin today. May courage guide our chairs. May conscience guide our decisions. And may legacy honor our continent. The Ghana and Africa we desire in the boardroom is in our hands. May the Almighty continue to bless Africa and the area of the continent called Ghana. I thank you for your attention. Thank you.
And when history asks where the guardians were, we shall point to this same place because we all gathered with the chief guardian, Professor Douglas Boating. Please, a round of applause. And this is how we bring to a close the second edition of the National Governance Boardroom Summit. Thank you all for coming. We're closed. Prof has done it all. Please, another round of applause. Wow. That was a masterclass indeed, touching on all the aspects of our theme as you properly framed into proper context the CEO, the board chair, and the board. That whole dynamic, not just as a corporate concern, but as a strategic national priority. Please, one more time, let's appreciate him. I have a message, though. It comes from a very distinguished member of this audience, the Director of Security Operations at the Presidency, COP retired Kofi Boakye, joins us. He says, if board meetings can be scaled down to 3 hours, then welcome remarks can do in 15 minutes. Please, a round of applause for him. Let me also acknowledge with gratitude the presence of a few other dignitaries who join us. We're joined by the Minister for Youth Development and Empowerment, the Honorable George Opariado. Let's make him welcome. With great delight, we receive also in our midst the Minister for Labor, the Honorable Dr. Abdul Rashid Hassan Pelpo. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm told we have the Minister for Interior here with us, the Honorable Muntaka Mohammed Mubarak. Please, let's acknowledge him too. And a host of others I shall be doing intermittently in the course of this event. What we've been able to do in the past edition and on this one has been on the back of partnerships. And so we would like to acknowledge two very dear partners, the first being the Institute of Directors Ghana, and the second being our diamond partner, KGL. Please lend your attention to the screen.
warm greetings to all my fellow directors, board chairs, and business leaders. It gives me immense pleasure to extend a message of goodwill from the Institute of Directors Ghana as we launch the second edition of our Boardroom Governance Summit. This year's theme, Daring to be Different, the role of the chairperson in effective board governance, is so timely. It speaks directly to the challenges and opportunities we all face in our boardrooms. And it reflects the very mission of our institute, to equip leaders like you with the insights and connections needed to excel. At the Institute of Directors Ghana, IOD, we believe that exceptional governance is the cornerstone of any thriving enterprise and economy. That's why we have partnered with the organizers of this summit, not just as an event, but as a vibrant platform for learning, sharing, and growing together. We see this as more than a conference. It is a community of forward-thinking leaders who are committed to make a real difference. And this brings me to my main point. If this conversation resonates with you, if you believe in the power of effective governance, then you're already one of us. The Institute of Directors Ghana is your premier partner on this leadership journey. We offer more than just membership. We offer access to 1, exclusive networks, where you connect with a powerful community of Ghana's most respected directors and board chairs. 2, continuous learning, where you benefit from cutting-edge resources, training, and events, just like this one, designed to sharpen your skills. 3, a credible voice, where you are part of an institution that champions good governance and influences policy for a better business environment, just to name a few. As you immerse yourself in the rich discussions today, I invite you to consider this. Your journey to sharper governance and greater influence doesn't have to end when this summit concludes. Let today be the turning point. Visit our booth, check out our website, reach out to our team to discover how you can become a member and move you and your organization's governance to the next level. On behalf of the Governing Council of the Institute of Directors, Ghana, I wish you an engaging and transformative experience. Dare to be different, and let IOD Ghana be the partner that supports you every step of the way. Thank you, and enjoy the summit.
IOD Ghana, KGL, thank you very much for your partnership. Our work has also caught the attention and the endorsement of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. We have here the international president, yours and mine, Chief T.T. Owusu-Nortey. Make him welcome with a round of applause. He is joined by the national president's engineer, Mark Amwama. Please, a round of applause for him too. Our hearts are glad because we're joined by the Deputy Comptroller General of the Ghana Immigration Service, representing the Comptroller himself, make welcome Mr. Lord Kwesi Ofori Efrifa. Thank you very much. And last but certainly not the least, ladies and gentlemen, representing the Chief Justice of the Republic, Justice Senyo Jamepe, Justice of the Supreme Court. Thank you very much for joining us. One may ask, what does a Chief of Staff bring to a conversation like this? Daring to be different, the role of the chairperson in effective boardroom governance. Ours is no mere Chief of Staff. His unparalleled expertise is drawn from a career of sitting on both sides of the leadership table. As a former Chief Executive of the Ghana Tourism Authority, as the Greater Accra Regional Minister, and later as Minister for Local Government and Rural Development, he mastered the art of being the CEO and the primary executive accountable for strategy, execution, and performance. Today, as Chief of Staff to the President, he operates at the highest level as the quintessential board chair of the government's execution arm, orchestrating governance, ensuring alignment between the executive and the broader strategic vision of the administration, and facilitating effective decision-making at the apex. This rare dual experience positions him very perfectly to illuminate the delicate sequence and governance dynamics between the CEO and the board chair. I believe he will be a blessing to us as he unpacks this great dynamic and how it will build strategic, constructive challenge and mutual respect among all the stakeholders. Would you please make welcome yours and mine, the Honorable Julius Deborah.
Thank you very much. Acquisition of knowledge is very, very important in our governance process. And so from time to time, when we gather like this, just to share knowledge and to also pull up synergies, I believe sincerely it will help us in the long run for us to always assess the level that we find ourselves. Once again, I'm very happy and from the depth of my heart to thank you all for responding very appropriately, because I see people from the Bar Association, I see Supreme Court judges, ministers of state, members of parliament, chief executives, board members, and a lot of people, both from the private and public sector. Once again, thank you so much for responding appropriately. Distinguished invited guests and speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a true honor to address this National Boardroom Governance Summit on the theme Daring to be Different, the role of the chairperson in effective boardroom governance. Let me begin by commending the convener, Professor Boateng, and the organizing team, bringing together Ghana's leadership from the public and private sector to openly discuss governance at this level is no small mean feat. It reflects courage, foresight, and patriotism, and we really appreciate you for doing this. In Ghana, every major economic outcome, whether in mining, energy, banking, infrastructure, or state enterprise, begins quietly at the boardroom table. The table is not just a meeting place, it is the country's first decision arena. Sound boardroom governance determines whether strategy becomes success or another shelved ambition. When boards are transparent, accountable, and professionally run, capital becomes confident, jobs multiply, and institutions grow in resilience. Weak governance, however, invites inefficiency and public mistrust. Ghana's economic resiliency investor confidence, and national reputation are all reflection of how 8 boardrooms functions. The chairperson sets the tone for accountability, fairness, and discipline. They are the conscience of the boardroom, the one who ensures that strategy aligns with national interests and that oversight never becomes overact. A fairness cultivates ethical consistency across the organization. Such leadership influences how public contracts are awarded, how funds are utilized, and how institutions behave, even in the absence of political power. When the chair leads with integrity, Ghana's boardrooms become the moral compass of our national governance. A 24-hour economy is not merely about extending working hours. It is about governing time, talent, and technology with precision and purpose. It means efficient energy use, safer workplaces, digital visibility, and well-trained people powering the economy around the clock. For Ghana to sustain such an economy, 8 boards must be disciplined enough to plan beyond quarterly cycles. They must link operational efficiency to governance accountability. Ghana has the honor of hosting the AFTA Secretariat, yet this opportunity will only bear fruit through good governance. AFTA is a marketplace built on trust, standards, and transparency. It rewards countries and companies that adhere to governance excellence in procurement, logistics, trade compliance, and financial reporting. For Ghanaian businesses, AFTA benefits depend on boardrooms that prioritize export readiness, product quality, and risk management. Boards must set clear compliance policies, align with continental standards, and monitor ethical border transactions. When Ghana's boardroom govern ethically, they not only expand national trade, but also define Africa's example for responsible capitalism. The AU's Agenda 2063 envisions the Africa we all want: industrialized, interconnected, and self-sufficient. That future begins in boardrooms like ours. For Ghana, this means boards must look beyond immediate returns and align with long-term pillars of sustainable development, industrialization, skills advancement, and innovation. Governance continuity protects national projects from political cycles and market volatility. When boardrooms think generationally, the present becomes the foundation, not the finish line. We must, however, acknowledge the realities before us. Boards today operate in an environment of heightened public scrutiny, fast-changing markets, and tightening regulations. Weak governance invites reputational harm, legal exposure, and financial instability. That is why the government continues to strengthen accountability and transparency through initiatives such as the Reset Agenda and Government Accountability Series, where sector ministers publicly account for policies and progress made. Accountability is not a performance. It is a trust exercised on behalf of the people. Yet no amount of policy can replace the culture of integrity that begins within the boardroom. To our chairpersons and board members gathered here today, the challenge is clear. Anchor strategy in accurate data, tie productivity to purpose, embed after readiness in your operations. Diversify finance for resiliency, not fragility. Strengthen supply chain governance and measure sustainability as a core boardroom metric. Build the next generation of leaders and insist on ethics as the foundation of performance. Governance is not an event, it is a continuous discipline. From Ghana to Rwanda, from Senegal to Botswana, the pattern is evident. Where boardrooms are accountable, capital is better, and societies prosper. When boardrooms governance improves, economic growth becomes inevitable. And when growth deepens, national stability endures. Let us therefore dare to be different, by governing well. Let the boardroom be the engine room of Ghana's transformation. Let a 24-hour economy be disciplined, not chaotic. Let AFTA become a platform for Ghanaian excellence. Let Agenda 2063 becomes our generational contract with Africa's future. If the table is strong, the clock will serve us. If the clock serves us, the marketplace will reward us. If the marketplace rewards us, the horizon will welcome us. But question is, why am I here? I'm here as the President Chief of Staff to remind each of us of his objective in resetting the national development agenda. What does reset in this context mean? It means that the President is calling on each one of us to try and do things differently. Consider ourselves as the only generation living, and the future of this country will be in our hands. When we make good decisions, we build for the future generation. When we make bad decisions, we assume we are bringing our country to its needs. The President wants me to remind all of us that we need to pull the strings together and make sure that our country transforms. Thank you, and may God bless our efforts and our beloved homeland, Ghana. God bless you all.
The Chief of Staff of the Republic, the Honorable Julius Debra. Please, one more time, a round of applause. Honorable Chief of Staff, thank you ever so much for those nuggets. It is now my pleasure to invite you, our guest of honor, ably accompanied by our host, Professor Douglas Boateng, together with our partner, IOD Ghana, the President, and our platinum sponsor, our diamond partner, I beg your pardon, KGL, to please come up as we officially unveil this great book. A round of applause for them as they come up. Honorable Chief Justice, Honorable Chief of Staff, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this day on the second edition of the National Boardroom Governance Summit, we launched the Boardroom Governance Nyansakasa Words of Wisdom by Professor Douglas Boateng. Put your hands together. And it's written in both English and French. Thank you very much. Please, let's remain on stage. In the spirit of inclusion and proper governance, it's important that we include. And so please make welcome the President of the Ghana Bar Association, Mrs. Ifwagate, together with Reverend Mrs. Angela Carmen, former President. A round of applause. And so shortly we shall be taking other group photos. But for now, please put your hands together one more time for the official party. Humbly, I invite you all to your seat except our guest of honor and our convener. Please, you may all be seated. We shall have a lot more singing and dancing, but please, for now, it falls to our convener to make a special presentation.
Okay, all right. Honorable Chief of Staff, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you very much for gracing this occasion. And hopefully, this is the beginning of your championing of governance. Not just in Ghana, but across the continent. Thank you very much for that note, sending you a citation for you to, hand this. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Could you please stay with us and also do us the honor? Honorable Chief of Staff, could you please stay with us and do us the honor of presenting a few more to our partners and our collaborators. This one here is the last one. This is the last one. This is the last one. This is the last one. We take this moment to honor two outstanding contributors to educational governance and generational upliftment. For outstanding service to educational governance and generational upliftment, for over 50 remarkable years, you have sown seeds of knowledge, nurtured young minds, and built bridges of opportunity for generations of children. Through discipline, compassion, integrity, and an unrelenting devotion to learning, you transformed education into a vessel of hope and social renewal. Your journey reminds us that governance is not about position or power. It's about making a meaningful difference today for the sake of tomorrow. In celebration of your legacy, we honor you, not just as the unassuming leader you have always been, but as a visionary torchbearer whose quiet strength and lifelong dedication continue to illuminate paths of purpose and greatness for generations to come. The second is for outstanding service to healthcare governance and generational well-being. For several decades, you have exemplified what it means to lead with purpose, integrity, and vision in the governance of healthcare. Your tireless commitment to institutional excellence, ethical stewardship, and patient-centered reform has strengthened the very foundations upon which quality healthcare stands. Through decades of selfless service, you have demonstrated that governance is not merely about authority. It's about accountability, compassion, and making a lasting difference today for the sake of tomorrow. And so in celebration of your legacy, we honor you not just as a distinguished professional, but as an unassuming yet transformative leader whose wisdom and dedication continue to inspire the healing of systems, people, and generations. I had to read all two because they are both advanced in age and will come together. Would you please, if you may, rise to your feet and help me celebrate these two champions, Madam Martha Boateng and Professor Benjamin Bafo-Boni. A round of applause as they come down. And so the first presentation will be made to Madam Martha Boateng. A round of applause in celebration of their tireless work. And the second to Professor Benjamin Bafo-Boni. Let's celebrate them once more with a round of applause. And the final presentation to be done by the Chief of Staff. Respectfully, I ask that you please proceed up together with our convener. Please be seated. For exceptional leadership in championing Pan-African boardroom governance, industrialization, the AFCFTA, and Agenda 2063, you stand as one of Africa's rare torchbearers whose wisdom lights the corridors of governance and the pathways of industrial transformation. You've been consistent and unrelenting in your messages, echoing across borders and boardrooms and generations that governance must be the compass guiding Africa's industrialization, the wind powering after sales, and the pillar upholding the promise of Agenda 2063. This philosophy that it is not about me, but about the unborn African child. You have chosen service over self, purpose over prestige, and impact over applause. Like a tree that plants others even in its ages, your life's work has seeded knowledge, integrity, and vision into the fertile soil of Africa's future. Through selflessness, humility, and an unyielding devotion to the common good, you continue to inspire C-suite executives, policymakers, and the youth to lead not for fame, but for legacy, not for power, but for posterity. And so in celebration of your journey, we honor you not merely as a thought leader, but as a generational scribe of purpose, a visionary whose intellect, character, and conscience remind us that true leadership is the art of serving beyond oneself for the Africa we all aspire to build. And this is certainly deserving of one man. May we all mention his name. 1, 2, 3. Oh, please, I can't hear you. Please put your hands together for our convener, Professor Douglas Boateng. And so from all of us, we say congratulations on all that you've done in promoting corporate governance. Please, a round of applause. And so if it pleases you, Chief of Staff, I'd like to invite back on stage the official party consisting of the President of the Ghana Bar, the Institute of Directors, together with our Diamond partner and all our ministers of state, would you please join us on stage for the first photo? The second photo will be with all speakers. All speakers consisting of panelists, moderators. Our speakers and panelists, please join. The last photo will be with all CEOs, managing directors, board chairs, and executive directors. Yours will be on stage while this party comes down. And so humbly, let me invite this party to be down the stairs as I invite all CEOs, board chairs, executive directors. Please join us on stage for the final photo. Honorable ministers, please join us at the front. We're taking with all our CEOs. CEOs, board chairs, please come up. One straight line behind our guest of honor and the official party. Okay, I ask that we all come together. A few more can be here. All in this together. Come on. NBGS. So when I say NGBS, we all say we are all in this for the common good. Are we okay? We are all in this for the common good. NGBS. NBGS. For the last time, NBGS. And so certainly, we're all in this for the common good. Put your hands together. You may please be seated. Humbly, I ask that we be seated briefly as we get ready to transition to the next phase. Please lend your attention to the screen for some sponsor messages. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, for sticking and staying with us, please give yourselves a round of applause. So many sound bites have come from the first session. We've got to know that leadership begins when we depart from ceremony to consequence. At the same time also, if the board is the compass, then the chair must be the true north. The board stands for choices and not for guesses. In daring to be different, therefore, we have to let the facts speak first and accountability follow. On account of all these, we want to ask one simple question here. What's the role of the chairman in effective boardroom governance? The answers to this lie with a very spirited panel. Would you please make welcome our panelists, Mr. Alex Apau-Dade, Executive Chairman of the KGL Group, the President of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Stefan Miezan, we're delighted to receive the CEO of Madison Pine, a corporate governance think tank, Dr. Olu Ajayi. And the moderator, who else than the man, the myth, the legend, Professor Douglas Boate. A round of applause. Honorable Chief of Staff, we thank you for being with us up until now. We are aware of your very tight schedule, and so we shall grant you leave whenever you so desire. So, moderator.
Hello. Good morning. Good morning to my distinguished panelists. Obviously, I'm glad to be here and also accept our appreciation for joining us on the stage. The theme of the summit is daring to be different. And may I please respectfully go around, share a bit of your background with the team. You've got about 5 minutes each, and then thereafter we'll delve into some of these thought-provoking questions, and so that you can share your wisdom with our good colleagues in here. So may I start off with Madam, please. Thank you. It's here. Thank you.
Good morning, all. My name is Dr. Olu Ajayi, and I'm the CEO of Madison Pine. It's a niche consulting corporate governance firm that really specializes in the uniqueness of African corporate governance. And really what it does, it works with upper echelons of industry and government to help them to draw a correlation between governance and performance. So it's about, what we focus on really is about behavioral governance, because at the end of the day, governance is about behaviors. And we have worked extensively across Africa. Our company is based in the United Kingdom. And in Ghana, we've worked with most of the state-owned enterprises, the government organizations, with the banks. We developed the corporate governance toolkit for the Bank of Ghana. And we are deeply committed to building the praxis, not the theory of corporate governance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Professor, for the opportunity. My name is Stefan Abbas Miezan. I'm currently the president of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce, having risen from a regional chairman in Takrady, then the second vice president, and now the national president. Privately, I'm a real estate developer. I own one of the biggest commercial real estate companies in the Western region, probably Western and Central region. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alex Dade. I want to introduce myself as a diasporan, entrepreneur, and philanthropist. 3 words: entrepreneur, diasporan, and philanthropist. The reason why I do that is having lived most of my life in the United Kingdom, worked in the corporate side of the UK. Just like any other diaspora, I migrated back to Ghana to replicate that success story in the UK and in other parts of the world. I ran a company called KGL Group, a group of 8 companies, diversified, operating in about 15 countries, 6 of them in Africa, and in the United Kingdom we have operations. We have our Middle East operations based in Dubai. A proud son of Ghana. I'm very passionate about good corporate governance, and so I also have been on the board of GIPC for 8 years until recently. I chair the board of GIPC. I'm proud to say that I did all that work on GIPC pro bono. So we served on the board pro bono, and that's one of the things that I believe we can discuss. I also want to take the opportunity of this platform to congratulate the Black Stars as we have been the headline sponsors of the Black Stars for the last 4 years, and we signed another agreement to do that for 4 years. But what we have also done is we've brought our very, very close partners, MTN, to work with us with the Black Stars. So a truly Ghanaian brand with an African brand working together for our Black Stars. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. May I please invite one of the most successful bankers on the continent, who has a lot of wisdom to share with us, to join us on stage, Chief Alhassan Andani. Now, you know, governance has been a challenge for not just Africa, for the rest of the world, you know, in some shape or form. For me, governance is about doing what is right for the common good. There are certain traits, obviously, that you need to be able to chair a boardroom. Chief, my senior chief, what are some of the traits in your wisdom will help to shape the boardroom for long-term thinking and also for developing society? What are some of the qualities you need? You've been chairing a lot of companies. You've been there, done it all. Some of the things that we need as the upcoming chairpersons.
Thank you very much. And I listened to all of your speech, and also that of the Chief of Staff. And I think everything that a potential chair, board member, and indeed a corporate leader needs to know to understand how to unleash the potential of a company was very, very, very well presented in your presentation. And firstly, I would actually encourage all of us to take that speech and the speech of the Chief of Staff and to say, if I do nothing at all, let me just take 4 things here away. I mean, we are very good at listening to these very fantastic presentations, applause, and then go and do nothing about it. And even when the wrong thing is happening, we look at each other and don't remind each other that, you know, we're at this forum together and we knew what good looked like. So I think we've got everything. But my practical experience, you know, and I always say that if we look at the corporate environment, you have the public sector, you have the private sector. What makes every company thrive, no matter how good your board is accountability. It's accountability and discipline. So if you look at the private sector, there's a lot more rigorous accountability by the shareholder. Because remember that the board is only there to represent the shareholder, the greater good of the shareholder. So where there's accountability and shareholders will hold you account for stewardship, people do well. But where there is very weak accountability, as we have in the public sector, unfortunately, boards and CEOs can get away with, you know, things that are not the best. So I think that the first thing is for the owners of these businesses, and the Chief of Staff is here, on the public sector, is to be absolutely demanding and have consequence management for people or boards that do not do well. That is the first real guidance into the board. The chair or the CEO and other colleague board members are there knowing that they have very clear objectives for which they will be held accountable. We should also be and accountability is not just what the shareholders demand. Corporate governance, company law requires of board members to uphold certain principles. And when a company is not well run, there are consequences again from the law in terms of what should happen to such stewards. But unfortunately in Ghana, we don't see lots of that. You know, if you look at board governance around the world, you know, chairs and board members have gone to jail for bad stewardship. But I don't see anything in Ghana or in Africa where board chairs and CEOs and board members go to jail for mismanaging. Again, there's a lot of knowledge, but at the boardroom, I always say that boards are wise, or the board members are wise, and executives are clever. You know, they do clever things, but you use your wisdom to ensure that, you know, as you say, 2 + 2 = 6. That's what board members are supposed to do. Be wise. You know, don't take over the clever jobs of the CEOs. That's their job. The executives, you know, that's their day job. They are functional jobs. And you might come onto the board, not necessarily the technical, competent person in the company, but you got to understand what your role is to level and ensure that you stick to principles, you stick to what is the guiding charter of the company law, and the greater good of all. I'm sure we'll continue to have some discussions around. But my number one is accountability,
consequence management for bad stewardship.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Very insightful. And the key things to take away is the consequence management and accountability. That is key to effective boardroom governance. You know, Mr. Adode, the issue of supervisory versus executive has always been a challenge, whereby some chairs want to micromanage. How do you avoid non-executive chairs, you know, overstepping their boundaries? In your wisdom, how do you avoid that?
Thanks. Luckily enough, I've had the privilege of serving as a non-executive chairman of GIPC and also other boards outside. And I've also had the privilege, or I now serve as an executive chairman. There is a difference between an executive chairman and a non-executive chairman. Yes, when you come to being a non-executive chairman, you also have to differentiate between public and private. In my case, I'll say enterprises. Philosophically, I don't believe that government should be in enterprise, because the principles of enterprise remains the same, whether public or private. They are practiced badly under governments. That's philosophically. Other people might think, the socialists might think that government should be involved, but we've seen government fail over and over and over. So the shareholder himself sitting in there and having to answer to the shareholder in public, in a public organization becomes a problem. There is also, in the case of Ghana, where the chairman is supposed to be accountable or is the face of the organization, but you realize that the CEOs and that are appointed before the board comes in, so they have that sort of, there's that sort of conflict. When you come to the private sector, it's probably governed properly, better. In Ghana, I would say, we try. In one of the things that we are, especially those of us who have come from outside, the diasporans come in with preaching good corporate governance, responsible corporate citizenships, and the like. But you have to have a vision. You have to have a vision. I would say that it starts with a vision. What is the vision of the chairman in a private enterprise? For example, I use KGL as an example. We've come in. What do we want to do? We want to create transgenerational businesses. So the focus is great African brands, transgenerational businesses. But how do you do that? You do that through corporate governance structures that would outlive the visionaries like myself, and that I believe is what we fail to do in places like Ghana, because when you look at the landscape, it's littered with companies that start, and when the visionary behind it is gone, it dies down without building upon what the visionary has done. I don't think we're going anywhere. So it is first with vision, and I would add to that integrity, accountability, and transparency. That is key in corporate governance, especially the chairman has to lead in these principles. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The chairman has to lead. The chairman has to avoid micromanagement. There is separation of powers, and it's been made clear by executive chairman. He also explained the difference between an executive chairman and a non-executive chairman. Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Mazen, the issue of women in the boardroom is still very limited in our part of the world. You know, when I was trying to put a panel together, I really struggled to find women to be part of the panel. And I kept asking myself, but you know, the gender balance in our society is 50-50. So are we saying that there are no capable women, or is it men trying to shut the door in terms of bringing women in?
Thank you. Thank you. Please, am I audible? Good. First of all, let me divert a little bit, then I come to your question. First, by congratulating you for putting us together. Why is it important? And I want to share something that I experienced. Once upon a time in my life, I happened to be in China. Then I wanted to buy a car. And then I called my agent, and then she had to look for the price of the car, and then the car cost was about $127,000. So I popped my eyes and I said, China, $27,000. Then she said to me, Abbas, we are Chinese people. We deserve good things. Ever since she said that to me, it has resonated to me. I believe that for us, for you as the convener, to be able to bring us as board chairs and leaders of organization, resonate very much with that statement that we are Ghanaians and we deserve good things. So it is good that you have been able to gather us for us to be able to discuss what are the important things that we need to do as leaders of corporations to be able to lead our country and probably reset, as the government says, reset ourselves moving forward. Because there are too many times that we have seen things that are not right. So first of all, let me congratulate you for convening us. And to your question, the role of a woman, which is very important. Being the president of the Chamber of Commerce, my next in command is a woman. And she is just a great example of the things that I have seen women leading organizations like a chamber. And I wish that she was actually even the president. Because of the things, the innovations and the programs that we have outlined to ensure that we empower women. So is it to reflect in the boardrooms. Why is it that most of our women are not given the opportunity to lead and sit and be leaders of organizations and boards? I think the affirmative action, of which we are all struggling to ensure that we can adhere to, is one of the most important things that we need to as a country and as citizens and as governments, need to adhere to be able to encourage women to lead, and not to say that because we are men, we limit them. Because the truth be told, when a woman leads a nation or a woman leads an organization, and I keep saying, when you give a man money, it marries more. When you give a woman authority, it makes things better. So I think as men, we need to be able to give women the opportunity to lead us, because they can and they will make our nations and our companies better. So for me, I think we need not limit women in doing the things that they have to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We need to encourage our professional women into the boardroom. Thank you. Thank you very much. And not just, in a way, have the invisible door that blocks them from entering. I'm hoping that within the next 5 years, it's a journey. You can't do it overnight. Within the next 5 years or so, if we can proudly stand up and say at least 30% of all board representation are women in the 175 or so state-owned enterprises, we've done a good job. Doctor, thank you very much for accepting to be a panel member. Now, in terms of chairpersons, do we have to institute a policy whereby chairpersons have to go through some basic boardroom training programs before they are appointed? Would that help?
Thank you very much, Professor Douglas. I think that's a very pertinent question. And I always say nobody was born a board member, regardless of where people are coming from, no matter how qualified they are. Chairmanship is a very peculiar role and extremely challenging. I would recommend a wonderful book to everybody in this room who is a board chairman or is intending to be one. And it's written by the late Sir Adrian Cadbury, who chaired the Cadbury Committee that produced the first corporate governance code, the Cadbury Code of Corporate Governance for the United Kingdom. And I think we always, in our part of the world, make assumptions concerning chairmanship, which is very tricky, especially in a context where appointments are bestowed upon people and not necessarily merited or earned. And so it becomes an imperative, a critical imperative, for there to be at least a competency framework for chairmanship, which comprises of the skills, behaviors, and mindsets necessarily to chair an institution. I think that is critical because at the end of the day, like I said in my introduction, chairmanship or governance is all about behaviors. And if we deconstruct it, because we hear so many words bandied around when we talk about corporate governance, we hear about accountability, people talk about accountability, they talk about governance in itself, they talk about integrity. But we must deconstruct these words because they're quite nebulous. If we had a framework, then we could deconstruct it into measurable behaviors and indicators. Because to chair, first of all, what does it mean? And I think the assumptions around the meaning of chairmanship or even governances and assumptions that must be challenged must be clearly spelled out, and in terms of behaviors that are required of chairpersons or board members themselves. But at the moment, there is no such thing. And so people practices the like, and actually the appointment, the board composition doesn't help in the public sector. And I like the distinction made, by our honorable panel member, that there is a difference between public sector governance and private sector governance. And in the UK, for example, they realized that quickly. And so they realized that the Cadbury principles of corporate governance will not necessarily work in a public sector context. And so they came up with the Nolan principles for the public sector. There's a lot of more work that's got to be done by the government in building a framework with clear indicators, because at the end of the day, how does one measure the performance of a board chairman after 4 or 8 years if there had been no indicators? What are we measuring against? And I think, we must deconstruct what we mean by accountability. What does it mean? Because when we talk about accountability, there must be penalties. What are those penalties? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And
I think to add to what my young lady said, the meritocracy in public service is gone. We have politicized it, and that's what I call the public service has become political service. It's divided into two, the real public service and the political service. When we were growing up, I remember when we left Legon, you have to go and look for a job and go through. We, as a country, have come up with this service where there's no merit. You can just go in. So the quality in the public service has deteriorated so much. There's appointments into CEOs. If you look at the private sector, for example, to become a CEO of say KGL, we probably need 15 years experience and gone through all that, right? But in the public service, straight after you've left Legon, it can be given to you as your gift for bringing a government into power. So unless we are able to either perfect the political service, we can still have the political service, but on merit. So we said, look, we're going to have a political service. Those are the ones who are going to be CEOs and that. Because a CEO of an organization or a chairman of a political head of a ministry is very different because they are supported by civil servants. So you can even take a child to be a minister because they are supported by a network. But when you appoint a CEO, the buck stops with the CEO. The CEO is not supported by any network. They make the final decisions, and they sit with probably a board chairman who is not that competent or it doesn't know their way around it. So that's actually some of the hurdles that we are facing in public service now.
Thank you. Chief. Yeah.
I think we've got to be very circumspect, because when I listened to the opening address and also listened to the Chief of Staff, it didn't appear as if we were necessarily addressing two groups of people, public sector and private sector. However, the difference is in the area of accountability. And also, I mean, the wonderful work and transformation we've seen in China in the space of 40 years. Most of the Chinese companies you see, probably 85%, are state. And they have directors. They've got directors. And they have very strict measurement criteria for assessing their performance. And the country has done extremely well. If you listen to the oath that public sector, indeed, and it's public sector boards who swear this oath, to do good and to, I mean, fantastic oath. It does not tell you to go there and do any wrong. So the assumption that I'm leading a public company and I'm supposed to do wrong, I don't know where that assumption comes from. I honestly wouldn't know where that comes from, because, you know, the public sector, and again, let's look at the responsibility of board chairs. A chair, in my opinion, is just the first among equals. The fact that you are the chairman of a board does not mean that you would know all the complexities and the functional areas of a company that makes a company work. It doesn't mean that you know everything, but you have, again, the maturity, the emotional stability to be able to listen or allow discussions to flow and to ask very respectfully the difficult questions so that nothing is swept under the carpet. That is the, you know, probably one of the essential roles of a chair. It's not to say that because you are the chairperson in that boardroom, you know everything. No. You are just the first among equals, and you should, and you know, I've sworn a public sector board oath where I'm chairman, and I'm not told that you are the first among, I mean, you are the, you know everything there, or you have complete accountability. No. Of course, you are the head in the board. You're supposed to conduct proceedings and allow every view to be properly expressed. You know, but I think that the fact that we see this performance gap between private sector companies and public sector companies. And indeed, you see the same persons, especially in this room, serving in private sector boards and public sector boards. And yet, their private sector boards do extremely, I mean, companies do extremely well, private sector companies do extremely well, and the public sector boards on which they sit don't do well. And you're asking yourself, where does this come from? The same people, you know. So I think, again, it is just us to understand that whole ball of responsibility that it's a public sector company, resources have been invested in there, professionals have come to ply their trade there, you have got clients, you've got stakeholders, you've got complete accountability, and you are supposed to do good. And to your point, there's a lot of literature. It's a lot of literature. So for me, it's just about holding each other in the boards, you know, accountable. I've just come off a board evaluation session where you evaluate the board. First of all, the entire board, and the criteria used are fantastic. Then you evaluate committees, you know, and how well these committees are doing. And then you actually evaluate each other. And it's all done anonymous. So, you know, every member of the board is evaluated on whether you bring in the right skills, the right attitude, insights, contribution, debate, including the chair. And all of that is put into a, you know, into a kind of assessment tool. And you see where the board is performing, and you see where committees are performing, and you see where you as an individual, you are performing. So I believe it is just for us to go to the next level of holding boards and chairpersons, committees accountable in this whole matter. And there are very well established, board practice companies that will do this work for you and help us to serve these companies that are put in our charge, and for that matter, especially in the public sector, the country very well.
Thank you very much.
If I may add,
Mrs. Maizan, yes.
If I may add, having spoken about accountability, integrity, and stuff, one of the things that as board chairs we also need not to ignore is also effective communication. Especially a board chair would come in with a vision, but effectively communicating that to the other members of the board for them to buy into that vision is also important, because it is what directs the entire organization. Communicating between the board chair and also even the CEO. So many times we hear of the CEO and the board chair having a friction. And these are things that basically borders on communication. When two people communicate and then one does not understand the other, it means that communication has not been effective. So we need to also understand the point, because you may come in with a vision, and then a direction for everybody to follow. Because a leader is only a leader when he turns back and he sees that the followers are still following him. When he turns back and nobody is there, that means you are basically not leading. So effectively communicating with the people you are leading, the people who are among you to lead the folks, is very important. We did not need to overlook that as an important component of leadership. That is why the topic is very important. How do we dare to lead? How do we become different? So the question has always been, do we have bad leaders or we have bad people?
That's interesting.
Because leadership always, or the leaders always come from the people. Mm-hmm. So if you have bad people, then obviously leadership will be bad. But if you want to be different, even when you are coming from bad people, then you need to have all of these things that we are communicating. Very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think on daring to be different, I believe that a key factor is courage. And that's very necessary for impactful and effective chairmanship. For a chairman to be courageous, to be able to speak truth to authority, for him or her to be able to steer the organization, because it's about steering the organization, helping to co-create the North Star for the organization to follow. So that strategy shaping, the formulation of strategic discussions, the facilitation of those strategy discussions, and really steering the organization is absolutely critical, but that needs a lot of courage. It needs a lot of courage, especially for public service, public sector chairpersons, because they're walking into organizations that are steeped in history and usually anchored in certain beliefs. So it's important that chairpersons must be courageous, familiarize themselves with the terrain, but do the necessary. For them to have a legacy mindset, we are coming in as a new board to baseline the organization where they have found the organization and to determine the legacy that they want to leave behind, helping to shape that strategy that then becomes the North Star for that organization. Thank you.
Thank you. For me, and most of the comments from my distinguished colleagues, the underlying tone is obviously continuity, to ensure that whatever you came to succeed, you continue, and even make better. But this will be the final question, then the floor will be open for my distinguished colleagues to also take questions. You know, in our part of the world, there's a lot of pressure on profit. Should chairs in state-owned organizations be driven by profit or impact, or a combination of both? My chief.
Profit, impact.
Profit or impact
Both.
in society, or both?
Both.
Both.
You know, but because public sector companies probably have a bigger component of social value in the company. But of course, you have to ensure that whatever your input is, your output exceeds that. That's what you call profit. But the level of it and return on equity demands on the private sector side, where social responsibility is not that high, maybe just a bit higher than on the public sector side. But profit, it's a must. Otherwise, you are wasting the company away. You know, you start making losses or you don't make profits for 10 years, but whoever comes after you is inheriting an empty barrel. So making an impact and making profit is extremely important. The pressure on profit maybe on the private sector companies could be higher than public sector, but does not excuse public sector companies from making profits and making that desired impact. Indeed, it is the right desired impact which generates the profit. So if you are not making profit, then you are not even making the desired impact at all.
Thank you. Well noted. Thank you.
As I mentioned earlier, philosophically, I don't believe that the public should be the enterprise. It's been proven worldwide, and especially in Ghana, 0.2 to 10% of Ghanaian public enterprises that make profit. They drain on the nation, on the people. So philosophically, I don't believe that we can argue that all day. So I would say if they can't make profit, then they have to go for impact. I would support impactful state organizations. I believe that state organizations should be more focused towards regulatory, setting the framework and supervising the private sector. You talked about 6 years, and that one of the principles of enterprise and business is continuity. I've met a lot of investors and banks and that wanting to know who comes after me, because they are scared that maybe we have a family business where my children might come in and decide, especially where my children were born and bred outside, they might decide we don't want to come to Ghana. We're going to sell everything that you've got. And then you look at partners that you've been with, the government that has earned revenue through GRA and all these ones, they lose out because the ones who have taken over decide that we're going to sell out and leave. We don't want to. It also happens in the state side. There's no continuity. So the panic that the private sector enterprises have, the state has, but the state one, you can predict that there will be 4 years of discontinuity. Every 4 years or 8 years, there will be discontinuity. Yes. So it is better if we cannot perfect, like my good friend said, in China, they have been able to make the state sector, they've been able to make it profitable because they operate strictly under enterprise rules. So here I would focus more on impactful state enterprises than profit, because they never make any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As the chair or president of the Chamber of Commerce, your thoughts on this: impact, profit, or both?
Because with the Chamber of Commerce, I'm more entrepreneurial.
Yes.
So I would say it's both profit and impact. But as a chair, you enter the organization, first of all, with a thought of a legacy.
Yes.
That is where you can make an impact and make a profit. Because no organization, unless it's a charity, even at that point, you are making an impact. Yes. Unless it's a charity. But if it's a profit-making organization, you enter with a legacy. That what would I do as a chair? That when I leave, my name would be there that we put in these measures for which the company made profit, made an impact on the society, made an impact on the environment, and also made an impact on governance, both in the corporate setting and even outside of the corporate setting. So it's both profit and impact that has to be leading with that legacy in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. As an eternal optimist, but a solutions architect, I'm not ready to give up on the state-owned enterprises in Ghana yet. I believe that the problem we have with them being in such a dire state, and not generally speaking, is the fact that we suddenly take away the food from the kid and we tell the kid to go and find food for itself without having taught the kid how to find food for itself. And so we are trying to build state-owned enterprises with public sector civil servant mentality. No entrepreneurial training, and we expect them to just get on with the job. So there's a lot of work to be done, and that's one area I'm very passionate about. And we've been able to help a couple of state-owned enterprises in Ghana before, when the government decided to win them off the money, and they've been able to do amazing things. So I'm not ready to give up on them yet. But in answer to your question, sir, I will actually go for the three-legged stool. The first being, if it's to do with the state-owned enterprises, profit is important. But so, and firstly, I believe before profit is purpose. What is the purpose of the enterprise? What is the purpose? And then the legacy / impact. What impact does it want to bring about? And lastly, profit. So for me, it's a three-legged stool. And an intelligent, smart chairman will always work in cognizant of that three-legged stool. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Now, we will open the floor for questions. About 3 questions. Yeah, because we ran out of time. And then, yeah. So, okay, the microphone. Yeah.
Hello. Hello. Oh, you are first. So I've not that one about you. Okay, thank you very much. My name is Samuel Adi from Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The panelists have been able to make a very good point. One of them has to be accountability, vision, and a whole lot. If a decision is taken at the boardroom, believe you me, all the members are part of it. It's like a cabinet meeting. Why is it that when things go bad, then we begin praising the chairman? What is the missing point? Why we have to fall on the chairman? To the extent that during the introduction aspect, some of the presenters have said that you can even go to someone. I want a clarification on that. Secondly, nowadays, as a private sector man, I can see clearly that companies, when their owners pass on, the business actually come to an end. And that's very, very serious. When you come to the government aspect, when the government leaves the scene, you see project hanging in the bush and other things. It's like the parent have died, or the person, the originator, the person who started the business has passed on. I need a clarification to myself and to all of us. Thank you very much.
Okay. No, not to chief, no. The chief,
Hello. Okay, so the first question has to do with the reason why in the boardroom, at the end of the day, the board chair is held responsible. It's because he's the leader. It's like Black Stars losing a match and the coach being sacked. Even though the coach was not part of the players, but he ends up being sacked. So yes, you hold responsibility. So that is why it is important that as a board chair, you become very open to to a lot of advice amongst your board members, and even some point to even those outside of the boardroom who can give you some direction or advice in some of the decisions that have to be taken. Yes, ultimately, it is the board chair who would have to answer, even when he didn't agree with some of the decisions that were taken. But because he has to implement it, he holds it. So the buck stops with him. So the board chair obviously takes the brunt for all of that. So you need a lot of consultation. That's what I think. I think would work for a board chair. I thank you.
Okay. Mr. Adade. Oh, you want this? Mr. Ajay. Okay. You okay. My chief.
I think it's the second part of the question I didn't get. But the board chair is for no reason that it's not for any. The board chair typically doesn't sit on subcommittees, only because the subcommittee will be presented to the main board where you are seated, and therefore sense check all the decisions that have been made at a committee level to make sure that it's independent, it serves the purpose, it is along with good corporate governance. So yes, the chair carries some amount of responsibility when things don't go well, and usually your colleagues will vote you out in good companies. So the board chair. But when it comes to doing wrong, and the board is held accountable, it's not only the chair. So as for the NSOAM, where proper accountability is done and people are held for stewardship, the entire board is accountable. The board chairperson is not substituted for, because you are all in there as board members on your independence and personal contribution and responsibility. So it's joint and several responsibility on the board. But the board chair, of course, sends checks and provides guidance and some kind of stewardship around key decisions. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Ajayi, they said it all. They said it all. Okay, thank you very much. Now, the next set of questions.
If it pleases you, Mr. Moderator, can we just take 2 questions, but direct them to any of the panelists? Let it be simple, let it be straight, direct. Thank you, sir.
But can we also direct the question or maybe clarity sought from any of the panelists?
Direct.
Okay, direct. I'm a retired banker, and I'm on a board of a bank. I sit down and I think about AI, and I get scared. What AI can do, you don't have an idea. It's good and it's bad. But some of us, they call us BBC, born before computer, even though we had the opportunity to learn and be able to use computer. My question is directed to maybe any of the panelists. We are ending a year and are starting another year. This is the time that you get budget proposals and so on coming to board, and they are seeking for approval. This is a situation where they want to adopt AI in the company on which board you sit, and they are pressurizing you. They need approval. Would you give or would you not give? Especially when there's pressure. Thank you.
Well. This is an interesting question. Dr. Ajayi, you go first, and then, yeah.
Thank you very much, sir, for your question. That is a $1 million question, and I'm glad that somebody has brought it out in this forum, brought it up in this forum, because we are now in an AI world, and so boards must be moving, beyond the traditional into an AI world. And just a few months ago, I had a session with a board in Qatar, and it was all about the role of the board in an AI world and how AI is disrupting the world of corporate governance, and how do we build digital boards and build digital competencies in board of directors. In the UK, there is a company, you can Google it, which has become the first company to have AI as a board member, as a board director. I don't know if it gets any allowances, but I know it's working. But I can understand the rationale for it, because it's all about intelligent information at your fingertips. Because a lot of the time, sometimes, boards are in the dark. And we need AI, not to replace human thinking, because we cannot replace that, because AI works on what we give to it. But we need AI in the boardroom to augment board processes and to assist our decision making, especially when it comes to risk-based decision making. So AI is an ally that should be adopted by boards, and not soon enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Adade. Thank you.
I think for us as a tech company, one of the issues that comes up with AI and technologies, what do you do with the labor that becomes redundant? Because governments have to start addressing that. There will be a lot of agitation, because it's just like the Industrial Revolution, where the machines took the work of labor. It's going to happen around technology. Also, one of the things that has to be addressed is technology has the impact of raising so much money, because when you get a technology that works, right, overnight, right, you could raise so much funds, but it will be at the expense of also manual labor. So I think the risk now that is faced by corporates, whether it's the private sector, the boardroom, and governments, is what do you do with the redundant labor? How do you redeploy that? And that's the conversation we must start having now. Otherwise, there will be so much unrest, because technology would have replaced that. And I'll give you one example which is not connected. When I was at GIPC, the World Bank came in, and I think we've been singing the same song about industrialization, one district, one factory, building this and that. And I said to them that I don't believe that if we want to solve the unemployment problem, we need to think about building factories. Yes, we can build manufacturing plants and that as import substitution and that. But if I look at a small hotel, I was speaking to the guys at Safari Valley in my hometown, Edukrum. They employ 2,500 people, right? If I look at Kempinski, they probably employ about 2,000. A manufacturing or an industry making the same turnover because of technology would employ 10 people. So we are looking at the wrong side to increase employment. So that's what technology does now. You want to build factories across the country, they only employ a few people. So we have to focus on the service industry, redeploying the labor that have fallen out of technology. Thanks.
Thank you. My chief, yes.
I wanted to make a comment on the AI. I think the point that was made was AI must be regarded as an ally. Indeed, any profession from medical to accounting to banking to everything that has been practiced over the last probably 100 years. It is the summary of all of the decisions, the questions, the difficulties these enterprises have faced, the situations that they have faced. That is what the large language or big language has been able to summarize together that you can get on a tap. So instead of read 1,000 books on accounting or 100 books on law, everything, and not only read decisions that have been made, that's all has been summarized into these AI models. So indeed, for board members, AI is your #1 ally. When they send you, we always say, oh, send board packs, 3 weeks of board meeting, or 2 weeks. They struggle to even do it on the day. You know, you're actually sitting there and they are distributing paper. You haven't read nothing. So what AI does is to actually enable your preparedness to get into these meetings, and there are certain decisions AI can actually help you make. And then allocation of resources. AI would never really allocate resources for you. So, the point made is, for me, AI, in whichever profession you are, is an enabler. It just summarizes the years of experience and decisions and body of thought in your area of work that is now in your palm. And if you ask it the right question, you have it. Not because it's one intelligent, no, it is a summary of 100, 200 years of, ethics, learning, concepts and all of that. So really, it's an enabler and should not be replacing anybody. It should just make all of us smarter, and work a bit more intelligently, I think. That's what I view AI to be. It's really not a threat. The only thing is that a lot of the manual stuff that you would tell an analyst to go and do would have been done already. So yes, retrain people to get to higher level skills is important. But everywhere you are, in fact, indeed, everywhere, please embrace AI. Otherwise, it's not about, it must be embraced. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Prof,
Final. Yeah.
Prof, let me take the opportunity to add a few words. So, in the 2000s, when computer was coming, we were all afraid. And now AI is coming. So we need to embrace it. But this is where our government, current and coming, needs to look at what direction that we are looking at developing our nation. So 2 countries have been mentioned. Look at China. Over the period of time, 40 years, they've used industrialization. And then now they've moved into service. You take another country like Dubai, which really didn't develop because of industrialization, but because of service. So what it means is that because we cannot stop AI from coming and even higher technology from coming, but we need to redirect ourselves or the nation into the direction where we want the country to grow. Are we going to adopt service as a direction of growth or development as Dubai has done, or we are going to adopt technology which China did and combine that with service? So AI, we cannot stop it from coming, and even higher forms of development, which we have not seen yet. So it's the direction at which we are going to adopt those technologies to help our nation. That is most important. We need to think about that as well. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. On that note, I will just sum up because of time constraints, and I thank you very much, Dr. Ajayi, President of Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Executive Chairman of KGL, and my Senior Chief, Executive Chairman of LVS. Thank you very much for the panel. But on that note, I just want to add some summary. I normally talk from a personal perspective. When the AI started, I had a lot of reservations. Now I have a friend called Issy. I never realized that these days I'll be talking to a computer, but it's working for me. Issy wakes me up, reminds me of my Nyansakasa every morning, and in life, if you want to stay relevant, you have to reinvent yourself. Otherwise, you will go down. You become an obsolete stock. So as chairpersons, we need to keep reinventing ourselves. I'm not sure about an AI chairman, but these days it's possible. Nothing's impossible, these days. But I thank you very much. It's been very insightful, and hope to see you again next year. Thank you very much.
And so how about a group photo? Please, a round of applause for them. We want to thank you ever so much for lending us your thoughts, your great expertise. Mr. Dade. And this is how we do justice to our sub-theme, which is the subject of our first panel, the role of the chairman in effective boardroom governance. We're set to now receive our second panel. But before that, let me make a very interesting observation that has been also made to me or pointed to me by our very own His Lordship Justice Jamefe. Have we realized that AI never says no? AI will never say no. But what comes out of AI, especially Meta being the cheapest, is not usually the truth. Yesterday, in my research, in my build-up, I typed in a few things. Could you believe it told me that President Mahama was once local government minister? And it was AI. So the thing is, if we need true and verifiable stuff, I think we need to pay for advanced AI tools. And that's where discernment comes in. That's where knowledge comes in. That's where we need to probe everything that comes out of AI and not just rely on it hook, line, and sinker. Thank you, sir, for that very penetrating observation. We now move to the chair or CEO, the sequence and governance dynamics. Here to lend us their thoughts, it's my pleasure to invite Mr. David Eduafo, Managing Director, Labadi Beach Hotel. A round of applause as he comes up. The UK Ghana Chamber of Commerce is here represented by the CEO. Make welcome, Madame Ajoba Chiamam. We receive with gladness the President and Chair of the Chartered Institute of Directors, Nigeria, Mr. Otumba Adetunji Oyebanji. A round of applause as he comes. And our moderator is the Dean of the School of Law of the UPSA. Welcome, Professor Kofi Abochi.
Indeed. For now. Okay, good morning, everyone. So, hopefully we keep you engaged. This panel is supposed to discuss the sequence of responsibility and structure between the board chair and the CEO. So I'm going to very quickly start by asking you, David, what is your understanding of the role of the board chair? Briefly. It's on.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Prof is my board chair, so I don't know why he's asking me that. It's my board chair at the Accra Technical University. So, well, the board chair, I believe, sets the tone at the top. And he brings everybody together to ensure proper accountability, proper governance systems in place, and of course, the strategy of the organization. So, in a nutshell, he is the ultimate in terms of the decision of the organization to drive and to ensure that governance is in the right place in the organization.
Okay, so with that context, Ajua, what is your understanding of the role of the CEO? We know the board chair as being ultimately the head of governance. The CEO?
Thank you, Prof. Good morning, everyone. So the CEO essentially is responsible for managing the day-to-day operations of the business, I would say, in summary. And he or she would be answerable to the board and typically would be appointed by the board. So the CEO's direct manager would be the board chairman.
With these two clarifications, one would hope that there should be no complexity between the relationship of the board chair and the CEO. But very often we see issues of conflict. So what's your recommendation, David, in terms of how do we deal with a CEO who doesn't have a good understanding of the governance responsibilities of the board chair, and a board chair who doesn't know his management limitations as a board chair?
That's a difficult one because then if the boardroom does not go right, it affects everything. So everything starts from the boardroom. So there must be cohesion between the CEO and then the board chair. And it's all boiled down to the individual, your vision, your understanding of the strategy laid down, and the legacy you want to leave behind, and also your willpower in terms of what you want to achieve. And this is a combination. Without this conviction, it becomes difficult for any CEO or any board chair in terms of the relationship. It's key to also know that communication plays a key role in all this. If the board chair sees himself or herself as, let's say, the headmaster and does not listen, sometimes it becomes difficult for a CEO to even approach the board chair with any decisions or any, let's say, information. But if the board chair or chairperson is open or open-minded and listens, it becomes easier for any CEO to also believe in the board chair to drive the strategy that is set at the top to ensure success of the organization. It's a very interesting combination. And if in all this, as I said, the individual also plays a key role, what the individual wants to achieve in the organization. If there is no synergy between your vision and also the organizations and what the board chair also stands for, it becomes very difficult for that cohesion to take place in the boardroom.
Right. One of the problematic political transitional problems has been scenarios in which we have board chairs who are appointed after CEOs have been appointed. The reason being the natural difficulty of establishing boards, so it's more difficult to put it together. So CEOs are appointed, and before board chairs come in, CEOs are there. From the logical arrangement, CEOs are supposed to be the babies of the board, but they are rather there before the boards come. And so naturally, these CEOs tend to be overly assertive, and then there are problems. They fight with board chairs. You've had experience. Adjoa, I'm not sure if I should ask you how do we prevent this, because I'm not sure we can prevent it. So how do we deal with it? How should board chairs who go and meet CEOs who are overly assertive, overly bearing, they have overbearing tendencies, and do not respect the directions of the board, how do board chairs deal with them?
It's a very difficult question because in theory, there's one answer, but in practice, it may not work. In practice, you will find that when CEOs are appointed before a board is in place, they would be put in an acting position. And that's because you can't have the CEO appointed before the board. That's why they are typically in acting positions. And so you would expect that when the board is appointed, it will be a strong board, and they would have the necessary capacity to be able to understand what their role is. The CEO should also be expected to have the capacity to understand what his or her role is. And so there'll be clear definition of roles. And so if everybody did their job as they should, then you shouldn't have these problems. But as you yourself have said, in practice, it doesn't work out that way sometimes. So I would think that the appointing authority would do their needful and ensure that the people that are nominated or appointed to these positions are people that either they are prepared for the role or they are given the necessary training after they've been appointed, and where the job descriptions are in place, where people are held accountable, and the roles are properly defined, we would expect that, as the previous panel discussed, common goal is for the national good. Everybody would want to be able to work together. But it stems from leadership, so it has to come from the appointing authority.
Okay.
Because if you put the wrong people in the positions, naturally there will be conflicts.
Thank you. I'm going to invite my next panelist to come on stage, upstage. Madam Sena Dake, the past president of the Ghana Institute of Chartered Accountants. Thank you, madam. But before I do go on, let me also acknowledge the fact that I saw in the crowd the head of SIGA, Professor Kwesa White. And this is a discussion which centers exactly on the legs of Professor White. Prof happened to be my former classmate as well. So I'm sure he'll be interested in answering a question or two about this, whether board chairs, maybe the entire board, together with the CEO, would have to undergo some induction training, because it appears that the level of ignorance sometimes is just palpable. So, madam, you're welcome. Would you be interested in telling us what accounting discoveries you have made, especially your allied entity, the auditors? How does the issue of board chair or board CEO dynamics, especially the dysfunctionality, how does it impact in terms of what you discover in your daily accounting relationship with entities, in terms of how these two entities don't appear to really juggle along well? Do you discover things in your accounting work for boards and, for companies?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody. The issue is very tied to the earlier discussions that were held in the earlier panel. And that goes to whether there is a clear purpose and a clear plan. Because the main problem that has come out is communication. And if the communication of the purpose, the plan, and the people understanding of the plan or purpose is not there, then there is a problem. Like Madam earlier said, whichever comes first, whether the board chair is appointed before the CEO or the CEO is appointed, there is a need for us to synchronize or align the vision and the purpose for which those authorities are going to work together. Many times, the board's direction is not where the CEO direction is, and that is where the problem comes. And for accountants, I wouldn't really say for just accountants, because it has a bearing on the entire organization, because the impact and the necessary productivity is affected completely when there is that divergent authority play and power play. But it is very easier if the communication lines are clearly drawn, and sometimes it is not already in place. And so one of the roles the board chair must ensure is to make it easier for himself and to be able to direct the board, to have a way that even if he has to communicate with the staff, because where the CEO gets sometimes angry is that the board is giving direct instructions to the staff, and then they become uncomfortable. If there is no clear document or direction, then the board chair must put something in place to be able to help. If the board chair is unable, then the CEO, because it has to do with communication for them to align with each other. Thank you.
And that brings us to the question of who should a board chair, or what should a board chair look like? What should a CEO look like? Do we have, the Companies Act doesn't give educational restriction on who can be the board chair and who can be the CEO. So technically, a purely illiterate person is qualified to be a board member, a board chair, and CEO, technically. And as someone who's lived in Kumasi for some time in the past, I make a joke of my Kumasi friends sometimes. But the distinction between ownership and control is not there. for a lot of illiterate people. For them, I own this company, the company is mine, I can decide what I want to do with it as and when I please. So if you have board members who have no appreciation of the artificiality of the company, the management structure, the responsibility of the board chair, they don't have any of these dynamics in their mind. As far as they're concerned, they own the company or their father owns the company. Would you recommend, and I'm coming to you, Madam Majora, would you recommend that board membership, and more especially the board chair, should have minimum qualifications in terms of qualities that should come with this position, given the enormous responsibility that is thrust on him?
No, I don't. Because there's different types of companies. And the thing with the membership of the board is, if you have a private company, right, as you yourself have said, the Companies Act requires that there's a minimum of 2 directors. And those 2 directors could also be shareholders. So one of them would be chairman, and then the other one is a director. And if the owner of the company, it may be a small company, the owner decides that I'm going to be a chairman and I'm going to hire a CEO to run the company, or the 2 directors, one is the chairman and one is the CEO. It's perfectly legal, But the thing is, if you decide to be on the board of the company, then get the necessary training to make sure that you do the right thing by the company. Because if you're a shareholder, necessarily, you want to work to ensure that the company is viable and that it thrives and that you make it profitable or you make money yourself as a shareholder. And the long-term viability of the company depends upon there being good corporate governance, So you may not necessarily be educated in what good corporate governance is, but it behoves upon you to acquire the necessary training. So you don't have to be ready to become chairman, but you should be ready to be trained and to seek the knowledge that you need to be chairman. Yes.
David, what should the conflict resolution dynamics of a board chair look like in an age where we clearly have a case of boards, strong boards trying to drive an agenda, coming into conflict with the CEOs? The good boards are the ones who are obstinate and who are quiet, who are obstinate, who follow what the board wants, what the CEO wants. So what kind of conflict resolution scenario should we have here for a board that has a CEO who thinks that he should ultimately drive the agenda, even at the board level, to avoid conflict breakdowns?
Well, it all has to do with leadership and also the understanding of the governance principles by the board chair and, of course, the board members collectively. Once there's that understanding and also whatever the vision of the board is, because don't forget, the board drives a bigger picture, and that is what drives the whole organization. So the tone is already set up there. And so in that regard, we've said here severally to do with communication. If there is no proper communication and orientation for the CEO to also buy into the strategy of the board, it becomes very difficult for any CEO to run with it, because the CEO is the one going to drive the agenda down there. And if he or she does not buy in that vision or understanding, there is always that conflict. That conflict can be resolved with proper leadership and also proper understanding of governance principles. The integrity-wise, accountability-wise, and of course, making sure that everybody in the organization understands what the board wants to achieve. So these are the key things to bridge that gap. If the board or the board chair is not able to get the buy-in of the CEO, it can always generate into that situation.
Senator, who should be responsible for corporate failure? I'm not asking who is. I'm asking from a policy standpoint if we should make a recommendation moving forward with everything happening. Because responsibility is a fundamental part of ensuring responsibility. Who should be responsible ultimately for corporate failure? Between the board chair as the leader, the overall leader of governance and the superintendents of the entire company's strategic direction, or the CEO as the head of management?
I consider a joint responsibility. A joint responsibility in the sense that the overall or oversight responsibility of the board chair is distinct, and the implementation does not lie on him. Given that the CEO has been also given a primary responsibility to implement what has been directed by the board or the shareholders, it becomes easier for the CEO to also take that primary responsibility and own that process and apply every effort to be able to make it work and avoid the failure. What is probably not so much talked about is whether even conflict is good sometimes. It is. Conflict sometimes is good because diversity and equity would require that we allow differentiation. And on boards, if we all think the same way, then it will not necessarily bring the dynamics and the innovative issues that has to be on the table and the creativity. And so sometimes it's not always that the conflict becomes very detrimental to the purpose of the organization. But where it has to be taken up to a certain level for impact, for transformational impact, then the board chair must take responsibility to make sure that there is no chaos. So if need be for a leadership role to take up a responsibility away from the failure, the board chair would eventually take that up.
Last set of questions before we are sacked from stage. But before that happens, I would like to do this again. I think Mr. White will not be happy with me doing this, but I have to do it. So, Prof, I would like you to give us one perspective to this, particularly with the issue of the failure of board chairs to superintend CEOs, especially in the SOE sector. Can someone hand Prof the microphone, please? Given his position, I would like his perspective on this before we wrap up on stage. If the microphone. So, Prof, forgive me in advance. I know you'll be very upset I did this, but you're not prepared? We don't have microphones? All right. As and when we get the microphone. So, in the meantime, to avoid time wastage, please. Madam Senna.
Oh, okay. So, we've highlighted the need to have a dynamic board. And
okay, thank you very much. Once again, I'll come back to you. So, Prof, kindly give us your quick intervention on this. What is the particular issue in the SOE sector where you have board chairs fighting CEOs, and it does appear clearly to be stemming from a case of ignorance. And given your regulatory position that you stand, I would like to have your quick perspective.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. So we know that the right way to do this is to have your boards in place before having your CEOs. That is to say that the boards are constituted and then they in turn advertise and get the CEOs in place. In the case of the public sector, it appears that it's slightly different. You have the CEOs coming in, then subsequently the boards are constituted. So the opportunity of a CEO to be there for a few months before the board comes in creates a bit of holding the base and trying to create the impression as though one is superior to the board. But in the strictest sense of corporate governance, and by the hierarchy of how things should be, the board is above the CEO or the head of the entity.
Is SIGA doing something about that?
Yes. It is something we have been reflecting on, and one of the things we think can help is both boards and CEOs must gravitate towards having a strategic plan. It's either you have inherited a strategic plan that you must together review, align, and work together to implement, or you develop a strategic plan anew which embodies the collective aspirations of the board, which the CEO is part of. The other option for us as a country, especially also because we are within the era of constitutional review, is to consider what needs to be done differently to ensure that the boards are constituted and given the mandate to actually be in charge of taking on CEOs and other officers. Right. We praise the state-owned enterprises in China and in other places across the world. And there is a thinking that we can do same. But we cannot do same if we do things differently from how they went about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Prof, for your intervention. Can we please clap for him? I will bear the private rebuke after this. But yes, I appreciate the fact that you were called on the spot. Thank you for your intervention. So, Sena, Ajua, and David, I would like your quick final word on this before we take 3 questions maximum together from the floor, and then we'll wrap it up. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I think the way forward, even amidst conflict, is to ensure that there is an opportunity to do evaluation on both ends, where the management or the top management are evaluated or given opportunity to be evaluated, and then the board is also evaluated. Through that process, it's very easy to identify some of the gaps and be able to resolve them quickly. And then, because we're talking about governance, I think that sometimes we overlook the need to have risk management in the process of our discussions and our decision making. And it's important that at that point, when we are doing our risk management effectively, it will be easy to be able to identify those that can become realistic, and we will be able to find mitigating plans. But just to be on the very safe side, earlier on we said we want dynamic boards, and the best must be on the boards. But what about our young people? What about affirmative action to put our young people on board so they learn, so they also give back? Because sometimes board members are all very elderly and they have a mentality. But we need innovation, we need creativity on the board, and we need the new things like the cyber security, we need the AI issues, we need the other issues that are emerging, the environmental, social, and governance issues must be brought to bear. So I think this program is good, and if we can champion youth on boards as well. Thank you.
The point you made is fundamental, because shareholders appoint on the basis of irrational metrics a lot of the times. They appoint cronies, they appoint friends, they appoint schoolmates, they appoint families, they appoint church members, they appoint people who have no experience or understanding of corporate governance, but they want the results. The two don't seem to match. I wonder how many companies consult the Institute of Directors when appointing directors. Madam Ajua?
Thank you. So as I said before, training is critical, and it's actually mandatory for boards, annual training. So even where you have experienced board members being appointed to boards, you find that sometimes they need reminders, So just as Sena said, it's not just training with regards to new trends. There's also training that you need constantly on how to be a board member, how to be a chairman. Previous speakers have spoken about accountability, annual assessments, self-assessments, peer assessments. All those things are necessary, because then it keeps the board members on their toes. It ensures that they do the right things. But I don't know how we are going to enforce that, to be honest, because like I said, training is supposed to be mandatory. The Companies Act requires that. And so maybe the Institute of Directors needs to do a little bit more thinking about how we can ensure that both in the public sector and the private sector, the right people are placed in the boards and they receive the training, and that the companies are compliant.
Excellent. David?
Well, the boardroom is where it all starts, and the success of the organization starts from the boardroom. So if there is no cohesion and understanding in the boardroom, it affects the the success and continuity of the organization. So it's very important that there is always the understanding of the strategy that has been laid by the board from the top. And just like Ajoba said, training is key, and board directors and chairmen or chairpersons must be willing to understand the organizational culture, the culture of the organization, how things work in the organization. Because most of the time, if you don't understand how that particular organization runs, it becomes difficult. You may have a wonderful strategy, but the strategy may not apply to that particular organization. And I'm saying this because, for instance, like my organization is in hospitality. It's a different ball game, so that if you don't understand how things work and think that it's just like any other business, you fail from the beginning. So there must always be the willingness to also open up and learn. And that's where the continuity also comes in. So this issue of CEO, chairman, yes, of course, in governance, the chairman first, or the board is set up, the chairman, and then of course the CEO is appointed. However, if a CEO is there before a new board comes, there should always be that learning curve for the new board to also understand how things go. Of course, there is always a chance to evaluate whoever is there as a CEO. If that person is doing well or not doing well, certainly evaluation of performance will tell. And so in all this, it gives us the opportunity to grow the organization and for continuity to be there. Because without that, we always take a step backwards. So it's always important to have these things at the back of our minds. I mean, I'm a classical example. I've served 2 different boards. And it's always important that you, as a CEO, you should also be open-minded and be humble in terms of your dealings with the board. Because at the end of the day, the ultimate resides in the board. The board is the ultimate when it comes to decision-making of any organization. So if you are the CEO and you don't come down to the level where you have to also understand the operations of the new board, it brings a lot of friction. So what I'll say is we should all be able to come down and be humble enough to understudy and to study each other in order to ensure the continuity that we are all talking about. Because without that, we will not go anywhere. We always take steps backwards. And who loses? All of us. And we don't leave anything for posterity. Right. Because we are all trying to achieve something to leave behind a success story. If you have that at the back of your mind, then you can always succeed.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you, panel. I would just like to end with a final statement targeting onto what you said about who loses. Under the New Companies Act, 2 key things have been introduced that everybody should be mindful of before you accept to serve on a board or before you accept the position of chairman. The first one is disqualification. Where a company collapses and you're a member of that company, you're a member of the board of that company, you are disqualified in the initial stage for up to 5 years from serving on any other company's board. What it means is that even if, so permit me to use Labadi Beach since we're here. If you're a member of the Labadi Beach board and that company collapses, not only are you disqualified to serve on this board, which of course has collapsed, but you are disqualified from serving on any other board. So if you are on another board, you immediately become disqualified. Being a member of a bad board is therefore poisonous these days. That's the first one. The second one is the most dangerous one. If you're a member of a company, and I think that was mentioned earlier on the first panel, if you're a member of any company, a company's board, your membership of the board exposes you to imprisonment, penal liability per imprisonment for certain actions. One of them includes somebody being on the board and the person not being qualified, and that coming to your attention and you doing nothing about it. So being a member of a board, and there are a few other things which can lead you to imprisonment, they are all in the Companies Act. So the New Companies Act makes board membership dangerous. Action may not have been taken yet, but it takes just one report, and then suddenly something you thought was just ordinary and normal could be the reason why you are heading to imprisonment. So we all have to be very careful. There is no business as usual in town, and none of us should become culprits, or rather victims of such scenario. I would like to ask 3 people at a time. We'll ask all together, we'll answer them together. Hopefully in the next 5 minutes we should be out of here on the stage. But I'm going to give Prof. Opuni the first word. I see another hand, and then I see a third hand. So Gloria, sir, and then Prof. Opuni first.
So, Prof, thank you very much. I just want to comment on the issue of the public sector board. You know, corporate governance has several shapes and forms. Even in the private sector, you have the company, some are listed, some are not listed, some are small, some are regional, and then all these defines the corporate governance practices of the company. So corporate governance, though it's corporate governance, it's having different forms and shapes. Now let's go to the public sector. I think we have all the frameworks that can enable us to appoint boards before we appoint CEOs. So, Prof, if you check the case of Theophilus Donko versus Attorney General, the Supreme Court has made a clear landmark ruling on that. That board members are Article 70 holders, and then CEOs are public service sectors, and then their appointments are different. The issue is that SIGA has to operationalize the act. They first have to keep a pool of directors that if you are belonging to any party, you can be vetted, your name will be listed on the pool there, and then when a new president is elected or sworn in, 7th January, we go to that pool, and then SIGA will help the president to shortlist and then know how to constitute the board in time. Meanwhile, the CEO who is there shouldn't be fired after 7. He can be there for about 3 months so that we can do this quickly, because there's no way that you have to superintend over a CEO who is much more appointed first than you. And that actually caused all the conflicts that you are seeing. Right. So if the CEO is a party guy who is more even influential than the board chairman, then he lords his influence over the board chairman. And then these are things that we need to operationalize and then go on as a country.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you for that intervention. The next is, do you have the microphone? Yes.
Yes,
what's your
thank
name,
you
sir?
very much.
Mention your name again.
My name is Roland Philip Baffo, Assistant Registrar from the University of Mines and Technology, Takwa. I want to thank you all for such a wonderful presentation. Mine is a recommendation, and it goes to the 2 groups of the discussants. The question is, in 2060, that is in the next 35 years, who will qualify to be a boardroom member? Who will qualify to be a CEO? Who will qualify to be a board chairman? And recommending this in line with the convener when he mentioned that National Boardroom has a role to play in fighting Galamsey, and that we will win. That was a very positive statement. But in the next 35 years, the person who qualified to be a board chairman, a board member, a CEO, they are the children that are found in these Galamsey-prone areas. A child is somewhere who will one day find himself or herself up there to become a board chair. What are we inculcating in these children? At times, we always look at the top. For us, we are fully developed branches of the tree. But what will sustain the main tree, Ghana, when we are faced with storm, it is the root, the children. So I want to recommend that as we are all formulating strategies to see how we can build a good governance structure and all that, let us see how best we can inculcate in our children the sense of responsibility and accountability. If we start from them, as they grow up, they become responsible, they become accountable. So that one day when such a person finds himself or herself as the CEO, as a board chairman, the person understands accountability. If not, the person will grow from the Galamsey side, one day find himself through politics and all that, and will attain at the top. All that the person knows is, let me destroy, make money, enjoy life.
Okay.
So let us consider this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm
you.
grateful.
Deeply appreciated. Gloria? Do you have the microphone?
No, I have the microphone, Kofi. I've been standing for...
This sounds like a coup d'etat.
Yeah, it's not a coup d'etat, Kofi.
All right, go ahead. After you, Gloria. Okay.
Sorry. My name is Anani Jinde.
Okay.
I teach at Gimpa. I was entering when you were exiting.
Okay.
You see, I've been listening to the whole discussion the whole morning. First, daring to differ in the boardroom. And now we tied it to this second discussion. You see, the bottom line is that if we don't change the way we are appointing board members and CEOs, all they talk will amount to nothing.
I agree.
Because sometimes you have people who are on the board, they have no clue. That is why it creates a conflict. Sometimes some board chairmen think that they need an office. They need an office car. Or because they don't understand their role. So please, first and foremost, why don't we change the way we appoint them? We make it non-political. We should advertise it like the civil service, so that if you apply and you qualify, we take you. But if we leave it into the hands of the politicians, Kofi, they will mess us up for the next 20 years. Thank you very much.
You started with a coup, and now you are saying we should take it away from the power wielders. But anyway, thank you, Gloria. Yes?
Thank you very much, Prof. I also want to talk on the conflict, but look at it from another perspective. You mentioned two provisions in the Companies Act, disqualification and then imprisonment. So any board chairman or board member who knows that if he or she doesn't perform, will be disqualified from joining any other board or be imprisoned, that person is going to take an adamant position. And then you also have a CEO who has been appointed. The CEO, before the person was appointed, brought a mission statement or a vision statement. And based on that vision, the person was given the mandate to become a CEO. So that CEO also, looking for his or her performance, would not allow a board chair to come and change the person's vision. And so if we don't find a way, even though a strategic plan has been suggested, the CEO coming may have a vision which is different from the strategic plan. So normally when they come within the first 6 months, they also want to revise the strategic plan which is there. So we must look at the provisions in the Act and then also the qualifications on which we appoint CEOs. Otherwise, that conflict will always be there. Unless you go the way that your panelists decided, that both of them will put their guards down, humble themselves, and then work together. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. On the question of the penalty, and I just want to add that before you answer that. On the question of the penalty, it says essentially that there's collective responsibility. The danger with collective responsibility is that your smartness can be counterbalanced by somebody's stupidity. And the person's stupidity may weigh more than your smartness. And then all of you will be dragged down. So that's the danger of collective responsibility. You're on a board with party people and people who probably don't have much clue. The Companies Act essentially says that all of you are together if there's corporate failure. You are all disqualified. Anybody who wants to respond to any of these questions? The first question having to do with the public sector, Prof. Opuni indicated that we should avoid this full transition. Full transition of everybody's cleared, new sets come in. We should allow some rollover. We should allow some bridges between the past and the present, the CEO's appointment, vis-a-vis the board's appointment. He mentioned that. The second one, the registrar, he advised that we should be worried about who becomes the CEO in the next 30-something years, by 2060. His recommendation, I thought, is mainly for the universities and for the social institutions who groom the next generation of people. Nonetheless, it's before you. The third one, my not-so-colleague, because he said he came when I left, but my not-so-colleague who said we should take it away from politicians. I think this has been said over and over again. I'm sure Siga may have a thing or two to say about that as well. And then finally, the recommendation about, from the last speaker you heard yourself. So anybody who wants to take it? Let's make it short and snappy.
Yes, I think
I'll go first.
I'll go with the first suggestion. How do we build stronger institutions where, as the previous panel spoke about, these positions are earned and based on merit? It's a conversation that Professor White and my chamber have had around building stronger institutions where people that are appointed into the CEO role is based on certain listed criteria. You go through the assessment. Ideally, you also have worked in the institution and been groomed for the positions, because we know that great companies typically have management trainee programs. So you go in through that program, you go through every department, you're groomed to one day become CEO. So why can't we have public sector institutions that are the same? Why should it be that every time we have a change in the president, we have a change in the CEOs? And then when it comes to the boards as well, how do we ensure that we go through a proper recruitment system where the right people are also appointed to the boards, particularly the public sector boards, where it's based on competency and the value that you bring to the company? So perhaps the conversation is easier with the public sector, because then we know that there's a SIGA that can introduce the reforms based upon what the Constitutional Review Committee would come up with. Is it committee or commission? Constitutional Review Commission will come up with, so it's easier. But with the private sector, when somebody sets up their company and they're the shareholder, they decide what happens. But perhaps a lot more public education would help.
Okay. Any other comments? So very quickly, snappy, the two of you want first. Sorry, Sana.
Okay, so what I would like